My name is Xia Zhang. I'm an artist and educator here at the University of Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm an artist. I've been working with clay for about 12 years now. I first really discovered I enjoyed working with the tactility of the material. It allowed me to visually put into these forms these emotions and feelings in which I didn't know how to put into words. And so working with the material, it was like learning a new set of vocabulary in which I had to understand the characteristics of that material, the limitations of it, and the various process that went into it was really fulfilling. Thinking about the stages of it being like wet clay to then greenware to bisqueware and then glazing it, and then what you do after you glaze it and assembling it was really exciting as a way to control an experience I can share with other people through the work. And I work a lot with repetition. That is the recurring theme in all of the work that I make, even though it all may look a little different. I'm always and continually trying to conceptualize belongingness, and in this search of looking for belongingness, I've been looking inward but also outwardly at the world around me, thinking about how my identity is a buildup as well as an intersection of various ways in which that I've been expected to perform my identity. So that is kind of what you see behind me in this piece called Black and Blue BS Theory. It's a piece that conceptualizes the bootstrap theory, which romanticizes labor of who is expected to perform in a certain way, of what bodies are exploited, of what bodies are upheld through this exploitation of mass amounts of bodies. I think because we're living in a country that was founded on white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist views to attain power, that we're still expected to perform in this system. And so this is a piece that is created on something called a gym rope, which I think if we went through the American education system in PE, there's always that one gym rope that's in the middle of that gymnasium, in which we're supposed to like pull ourselves up onto it, and that was something I could never do. And so I was really thinking about that in relation to the bootstrap theory of how we are taught that we all are pulling ourselves up from nothing, when in reality there's other things that come into play when you're born into a family that has certain knowledge, resources, language. You're starting from a lot already. But then for folks that are immigrants or have darker skin tones, don't have as much wealth, whose bodies might not function at what we consider to be normal ways, then there's more to pull yourselves up from. And so that's what this piece behind me is about. So these forms that I don't know how many there are. I don't really count them after a certain point. These are moondrop grapes, and moondrop grapes were these grapes I found in a grocery store one day. And I was really fascinated by the shape of them, by like how elongated they are, how they had like a little dimple at the end of them, and they were these very like erotic forms to me. So I purchased them. I was also fascinated by how expensive they were too. So it was just really intriguing. And after spending some time with them, I was doing some research and found that like in the early 2000s, these geneticists had modified these grape forms to be extremely sweet tasting, but they were also just very curious, fleshy bodies to me. And so I got interested in thinking about how people are using time, energy, and resources in order to create these forms for mass consumer market, and it's only really for a certain class of people who could afford them too. And so I was thinking about how, rather than putting our time, energy, and resources into helping people who are already downtrodden, who have a lot less than we do, who are working 7 days a week doing these very menial jobs, that rather than putting our resources into supporting them, we're putting a lot of our resources into creating something, that isn't necessary. So I created these grape forms first out of, they were just ceramic, they were bisqueware, and I made molds of them. So I have about 6 different molds where there are 10 of them in there each. So there's 60 different forms that are then replicated, and they're put together with a nichrome wire in there to have that hanging element. And then after that, I hand stitched all of them from the bottom up. So that was a lot of my work references repetitious labor, and so that labor in itself is deeply embedded into all of the work that I do. A lot of the work that I do consider it to be monuments, as kind of like an ode to a specific community or to communities or to specific feelings that might feel inconsequential at the moment. Just like how I've been making a lot of work about belongingness, trying to figure out that belonging between one place to another, but not really belonging to either, which is, I think, a feeling within like the Asian American experience too of belongingness. And so this here feels like a monument in a way. It takes up space while it's still kind of, it's very, like size-wise, it's not big. It is very tall and takes up that floor-to-ceiling space, and I want my work to have this presence about it that is unabashedly there. I think that also goes back to my experience as being an East Asian American woman, of being hyper visible to other people, but also my individual experiences, the nuance within my experiences are invisible. So it's like trying to grapple between those borderlines of, of being seen but not seen. So at the top of the piece, the grapes are dipped in more layers of the glaze that I used for the majority of the piece. So all of them are dipped in like black underglaze, and then after that they are dipped in a glaze that has these white particles onto them. And so I'm thinking about attaining to whiteness, and whiteness being like the modality of power. And so I have it in this gradient and thinking and looking at bodies who are closer to whiteness and what that means and how they've gotten to those positions. And so that gradient represents that relationship to, that aspiring to, that would never actually happen though. And so a lot of the bodies are pulled down by gravity and they are on this concrete platform, and like I'm thinking about how we use redlining to separate communities and bodies and who is expected to be in, you know, we equate urban centers with certain people, and like they're put there by other people to keep them within poverty lines. And so I have the whole form, it's strung up by this steel chain, and that steel chain, I think it references the unbreakability of systems of oppression, because there are many different links to it that hold and maintain it, and it's also extremely strong. It has a very long time in which the system has been refined and you know, continue to hold people in its place. And so I look at the materials in which I'm using to think about the symbolism of it and the meaning, and thinking about how we're all still kind of just strung up and expected to perform in a certain way, and thinking about how, you know, equating like whiteness to this like hierarchy, but also like idea of like closer to heaven, you know, being closer to the sky, closer to goodness. And so that's why I use those materials, because of those reasons.